Okay, Samra. So, for people who might not know yet, how would you describe your journey of survival?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's going to be hard putting it into a nutshell, but I arrived in Canada as a child bride in a forced marriage. I was 16 years old when I was told that I'm going to be getting married to a man who was a complete stranger to me. I'd never met him before. He was much older, 11 years in fact, and he lived in this faraway, wonderful land called Canada. And I was in Abu Dhabi, that's where I grew up. And a few months later, I was married to this man, found myself sitting in a big, huge wedding banquet hall with red and gold all over me, and I was now his wife. And a few months after that, I arrived in Canada as his bride, and I was 17 at the time. And I had one dream, to be able to go to school, to be able to have the opportunity to fulfill my ambitions. And that was snatched away from me because I was told it was not appropriate anymore. It wasn't it wasn't what good women do. You know, I was supposed to stay at home and take care of the family and his parents and my kids, and having any kind of ambitions of my own was selfish.
Right.
And it took a long battle, many, many battles, a lot of tears and a lot of ups and downs to be able to figure that out, that it's not selfish, to be able to fight for my dreams, go to school, and eventually achieve success more than I could ever have imagined. And that's kind of what gave me the passion and the desire to do something about it. And because I knew that my story is not just mine, and it's not special, it's not unique, and that's why it needs to be told.
What would you say, like, was the first time you knew you were in a nightmare situation or in an oppressive situation? When did it first dawn on you?
I always knew it in my gut. I always knew that something was not right because it did not feel right. However, everybody around told me that it was okay.
Okay.
So his family told me how lucky I was that I was at least in Canada and I was getting all these, good food on the table and amenities and all that, and so freedom was a word that is very scorned upon when it comes to women. Free women, they're like these promiscuous, disgusting creatures that no one wants to be associated with. So it was. It certainly didn't feel right. Like, I always questioned it, even as a little girl before the marriage even happened, and everybody around me was talking about, oh, your entire purpose in this world is to get married, and that's what girls do. I was like, if I wasn't supposed to use my brain, why did I have one?
Right.
And so I always kind of felt it. I always knew it, but it really dawned on me, or it was in my face when I started university, and after 10 years of marriage and after 10 years of all the abuse and oppression, and I saw the difference between the way people treated me at school
Right.
and the way I was treated at home. And I was like, why are these people treating me with so much kindness? Don't they know what I am? Like, I'm this
Okay.
really worthless creature stuck at the bottom of someone's shoe, but people treated me well. And then I started going for counseling, and that's where I first heard the word abuse. And it changed my world because I was able to put a name to it. I was able to know what to call it, and know that it was not my fault.
I mean, looking back now, what do you think were the main factors sustaining the oppressive marriage? It seems like from reading your story, it wasn't just your spouse, but it was like an entire kind of community complicit.
Oh, it's very systemic. It's very ingrained in the culture because, like I said, women, girls, as soon as they're born, they are the notion of marriage and being somebody's caregiver and provide and a homemaker is
Right.
drilled into their heads to a point that if they are not able to do that, that means that they failed in life completely. So a lot of women are pressured into staying because how will the world see them otherwise? What will people say? They will be ostracized and rejected and judged and ridiculed, and that absolutely happens. So it it's kind of like woven into the cultural fabric
Right.
that you gotta stay silent. You have to tolerate. Women who tolerate abuse are put on a pedestal, and they're like, "Oh, look at her! She sacrificed herself for the sake of her family. What a great woman!" You know, and women who do not do that, women like me, are the shameless ones, the homewreckers, the bad mothers, and the ones who are leading their kids on a path to hell, and they're the the just those alienated beings. Oh, she's so modern, she's so free. Like that's a bad word. So it's definitely that there's a huge culture of silence, this misplaced honor, and that honor is attached to a woman's marital status or her virginity or her, her sexuality, pretty much, instead of her dreams and goals and ambitions and personality. So it's it's a system which is very toxic, and that enables abusers and it enables abuse.
Sure. No, I'm absolutely going to return to the concept of honor in just a second, but I want to ask you whether it'd be fair to say that you were in a situation where you were constantly being forced to see yourself through the eyes of other people.
Yes. Yeah, I had no agency of my own. I had no identity of my own. I was a wife, I was a mother, I was a daughter-in-law. I was never just Samra.
Okay.
Because that idea was so alien.
Right.
My roles defined me. My familial roles defined me.
Yes.
And I saw myself through those eyes as well. If I was not keeping my husband happy, which means I was a failure. If I was not keeping the baby quiet at night, I was not a good mother.
Right.
And then, the baby was disturbing everyone, and I don't know how to raise a child. What is wrong with me? Like, is there something, that I'm lacking? Because it seems to be what women do, and I can't seem to do it. Or if I'm not being submissive enough and obedient to my parents-in-law, which means I'm not a homemaking woman. I'm a bad person. If I'm watching cricket and I have hobbies and I want to go out, it means that I'm promiscuous and I'm not trained properly according to my mother-in-law. Yeah.
I mean, all this language kind of suggesting that you're a property.
Absolutely.
Property,
And not just, this is not just implied. In fact, my ex-husband often used to say to me that you're my property and I get to choose what you do and what you wear and whatnot. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to touch on this, Samra, because I know that seeing your future, wanting to go to school, was a big part of your motivation to get out of the abusive situation you were in. But I was wondering, along the way, what was there for you to maintain a belief in your actual personhood rather than sort of seeing yourself in this property way that they were trying to force on you? Like, how were you able to resist that when everyone around you was trying to tell you that you're not a person, not property?
I think I've always been a bit of a rebel. In fact, very much of a rebel. Even as a little girl, I was always questioning things like, why can't I go play cricket on the streets like the boys do?
Right.
Why can't I why do I have to dream about getting married? I want to go to Harvard. I want to go to Stanford. So I was always challenging the cultural norms.
Right.
It was very outspoken. In fact, my parents were often told by my extended family that they need to somehow tell me to be, train me to be a proper girl. So it was always there in me. And then definitely during the first 5 years of marriage, I completely lost myself. It was to a point where I was ready to end my life because I just thought it would never ever get any better. But after that, I think something in me just felt that it wasn't right. And then again, that questioning, that I think it was more of a personality thing, that I would always think to myself in my deepest thoughts that if I was not supposed to use my brain, why do I have one? If I was not supposed to use my voice, why do I have all these thoughts and ideas? And education was something that was just so dear to me from even as far as I can remember. Every test, every exam would be a milestone, and I would be upset about the 1% that I did not get instead of, overjoyed about the 99% that I did get. So I was always one of those kids, and super, super ambitious. And this idea of, I have just one life.
Right.
And I don't want to sit there when I'm in my 40s, 50s, 60s and think, why didn't I do anything about it sooner? Because throughout my marriage, I would always sit there and think, why did I agree to this marriage? I wish I could have run away. I wish I could have just put my foot down and something. And I didn't want to have those same regrets.
Right. I mean, everything that you're talking about, like to the Western or the modern mind, would be like honorable, admirable, praiseworthy, right? So that's why I want to kind of return to this concept of honor and unpack it a bit. Where do you think this idea of honor comes from as it was being applied to you before? Because there is definitely this disconnect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's just the way that women are not just, I don't want to use the word treated. I think it's just the way that women are seen in, where the culture I come from is light years behind the Western culture in terms of progress. And we think back to, a few centuries ago in the Western society where women were homemakers, and they were, they did not have the right to vote, or they did not have the agency to be able to lead their own lives. And, so that's kind of, where we are. But at the same time, we're in a global environment, and we're especially for a lot of people who are living in Western societies, they feel threatened that the Western culture is threatening their values. So these values are even more staunchly held upon. A lot of times, women are accused of being too liberated when they come to the West, and that's why marriages fall apart. That's why divorces happen. Divorce is very taboo. It's very scorned upon. Speaking up is completely no. A lot of women are shamed. I mean, if you think of what's happening with Me Too, a lot of times women who speak up are accused of using this for publicity. I don't think any woman would want publicity of that sort, right? Like, I want to be famous, that's why I'm going to say I was raped. So I think the idea of honor is in silence. Silence is dignity. Tolerance is best. It's kind of like, take the high road, be the bigger person. No, you gotta put the shame and the blame where it belongs. And so when we look at that and think, and we couple that with cultural values, and a lot of it comes just from generations of women being viewed as property, women being viewed as some inferior beings, then this idea of honor becomes kind of like a proper woman is one that fits into this box. That's an honorable woman. And if you try to get out of that box, then you're somehow dishonorable, you're shameful, you're a homewrecker, she must have been sleeping around. That's why her husband left her, or she must have been unfaithful. There's all sorts of judgments that come in place because, you know, you just do not, you just refuse to fit into that box, you know?
No, certainly, and I mean, you just touched on it there in passing. This idea of honor being connected to a woman's sexuality. But I've been thinking about it recently, and I'm thinking that ultimately it's almost a way of controlling who a woman is allowed to love. Yeah, is ultimately allowed to love, which is like one of the most.
I mean, think about it, right? Forced marriages.
Right.
And a lot of times people, again, I want to draw the distinction between forced and arranged. And again, a lot of arranged marriages are forced, but a lot aren't. Because if I'm an adult and I'm going to my parents and saying, can you find somebody for me?
Right.
That's my choice. But if I am a minor or I'm a young person and I'm not really sure, and my parents are coming to me, oh, we've arranged a marriage for you, that's not okay. And they're not putting a gun to your head or a knife to your throat, but it still is culturally forced upon. So a lot of times, we are told who we're supposed to love.
Yes.
I was told I was supposed to love my husband and honor him and obey him and, be his homemaker, be his wife. That was my role. I did not have a choice in the matter. I did not have the opportunity to date and to get to know people and to find my partner and choose who I want to be with and what kind of person I like and don't like. So, and that is, women who do that are shameless women. That's a big no-no. How can you choose who you want to be with? So, yeah, for sure. Like it's, being told not just what to wear, but, who to be with, how to behave, who to love, how to tackle challenges, all of that, like, when to have a child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, because I mean, as I said, I was thinking more about it, and at first I thought maybe it's a way of controlling sexuality, which it is. But ultimately, I feel it's almost this sort of tyrannical approach to completely dominating another human being, because love is our highest expression of individuality. So if you're not allowed to love who you want to love, and it's being, framed in such a way that you're not allowed to do it because it's dishonorable, then you reduce a human being to a non-individual.
Exactly. You dehumanize.
I mean, the autonomy is gone.
It's completely gone. Your agency is gone. It's stripped away from you because the idea of connection is vital to us as human beings, right? We're all in this world for connection and belonging and love.
Right.
And you don't have a choice who comes into your life.
Right.
It's decided for you.
Certainly. Yeah,
And you don't, and to take it a step further, you don't have a choice who doesn't belong in your life, because once that's decided for you, you have to stay in it. You have to make it work, no matter what. And if you don't, then you're dishonorable.
Right. I wanted to avoid in our discussion, and I don't feel we're doing that, but this sort of like us versus them, that part of the world, this part of the world. So I just wanted to ask you, based on your own lived experience, whether you see any sorts of parallels between the cultural context in which this was occurring and here in the West.
There's a lot. And it's been very surprising to me. And it's come when I've been doing this work. Over the past few years, I've been traveling across the world and speaking to tons of people and survivors and whatnot. And what I have found is that there are many parallels. There's also many differences. So abuse, sadly, is universal.
Right.
It's 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 men in North America. So people from all walks of life, all cultural backgrounds, education backgrounds, religion, race, genders, are all affected by abuse. So it happens all around us.
Right.
But it's the cultural treatment of it, which is different. So the levels of shame and stigma elevated are more elevated in certain cultures and communities. It it is very intersectional. So you can't just look at abuse on its own. The experience of abuse for a Muslim woman or, you know, a Pakistani woman or a South Asian woman would be very different than that of a white woman, or, you know, because it's the cultural context and the racial context and everything comes into play. There are many similarities too. I was actually in January speaking to a group of survivors and support workers in the violence against women space in Saskatchewan, in a town about as white as it gets. And I was the only non-white person there, and I was a speaker. And I heard the same things. You know, I asked the question, so, you know, why do women stay? You know, that's a burning question.
Yes.
A lot of people ask, like, why can't you just leave? So I asked them, what are some of the barriers that they have seen and faced?
Right.
And it was the same thing. What will my family say? My church will abandon me. My kids will say, why now, mom? I will be damaged goods. I will be used property. I will be somehow shameful.
Right.
No one will love me again. No one will want me again. People will see me as inferior or damaged. And those are very similar to not only what I have experienced, the same fears and vulnerabilities that I've carried,
Right.
but also what I hear from women in the Pakistani, culture, or the Indian culture, or all the women that write to me from all over the world, from, you know, different backgrounds. Like a woman writing to me from Philippines would be saying the same thing.
Right.
So again, like I said, a lot of similarities, but some unique challenges as well. A survivor once wrote to me. It was a very powerful analogy, and she said, she's here, she's from Canada, and she said to me that, you know, when a white woman leaves abuse, or when a white woman is in an abusive situation, a lot of people will support her, will come to her aid, will say, are you crazy? Why are you staying with him? You know, leave. And when a brown woman or a Muslim woman is in an abusive situation and she even thinks about leaving, people will ridicule her, people will judge her, people will shame her, and they'll say, are you crazy? Why are you staying? Why are you leaving? Stay, make it work. And so same experiences, but very different experiences as well in terms of the reactions you get.
So are those reactions coming from the same people, same groups of people?
Yeah, family, culture,
Okay.
people around you, friends. And
Right.
I have experienced that in my life. I mean, a lot of times I feel like a misfit in my community and the culture I come from, because I've somehow done something that was so bad. I've somehow committed a crime. I've been judged. I've been ridiculed. My family doesn't talk to me. So
you're saying there's a difference between the white and non-white?
yeah. So if that's like, you know,
Okay.
for example,
Yeah.
when it, you know, if a white woman's facing abuse
Right.
from her husband, let's say,
Okay.
hypothetically, her family, I mean, I'm not saying it's perfect, but
Right.
you know, she will find support in her family, in her community. But when a Muslim woman is facing it, when a non-white woman an immigrant woman is facing it, a Pakistani woman is facing it, she will, instead her family will be like, no, you gotta stay, you can't leave, you
Okay.
can't. So that's what I meant. So it's the way that it's accepted and normalized in the culture.
Right. So, as I was saying earlier, how do you think we can be more supportive of those who are in the abusive relationships while they're happening? Because you want to be able to walk alongside them, but you don't want to be so overbearing that they cut communication off with you.
Yes,
and
it backfires.
Right. What's interesting also is that these are very strong women who are professionally accomplished quite often, and it almost surprises you that these things happen. So maybe my question is two-pronged, is maybe how we could be supportive, but also what these abusers are doing, like what are they tapping into to be able to exploit women who, in all other respects of their life, you would never expect that they would be taken advantage of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a very, very powerful question. It's it comes from a place of insecurity, I think, in both ends.
Right.
From the abuser's end, I think they definitely feel there is power in control. And that's what abuse is all about at the end. It's all about control. And when you feel good about yourself by putting someone else down and by controlling them, that's abusive.
Right.
And that can happen in a variety of ways, whether it's physical, emotional, verbal, psychological, financial, sexual. And abusers feel that thrill. Oh, she's under my thumb. I put her down. And she's my property. So it makes them feel manly. It makes them feel like, they're the king of the world kind of thing. And certainly my ex-husband often used to get a kick out of putting me down because it made him feel good. From the women's side, there's a lot of things. There's cultural values or norms, I would say. Lack of support, lack of self-worth is a big one. Because like I said, your earlier question about seeing yourself through your roles instead of your own identity. I have seen and talked to women who are highly educated, highly successful, but they're still tolerating abuse. There are many in my family who are. And that's because their self-worth is attached to those roles. How will people see me? I will be the talk of the town. I will be gossip. I will be judged. I will be ridiculed. So a lot of the society's reaction, because like I said, at the end of the day, we're all in this world for connection, belonging, and acceptance. And if there's a threat that we won't be accepted, and we won't be in a community where we belong, we'll lose that sense of belonging and acceptance and love. That's a really, really powerful threat. That's the fear of isolation. That's what holds a lot of victims trapped in abuse. Loneliness. It certainly did with me for many, many years. That was my biggest fear. Like, of course, I was afraid about how will I make it, like financially and all of that. But I kind of knew that I'll get by. I'll get a job. I'm smart. But what if I lose my family? What if no one talks to me? What if no one ever loves me again? So there's a lot of culture. Then there's a lot of, and victim shaming happens across culture. So that's universal, So somehow the word victim, the word abuse, it kind of carries such a negative connotation to it. People feel sorry for you, or people feel like you're sort of doing it just to get sympathy votes or publicity. And you don't want that. Like, as a woman, as a person, like, I don't think a lot of people want people to feel sorry for them. I certainly don't. And, I've talked to tons of people who like, no, I don't want pity. So there's a very distinct difference between pity and support. It's the same thing between sympathy and empathy. Right? So there's a severe lack of empathy in today's world, I feel. So I think that is a big factor. And again, the idea of self-worth, what do I attach my worth to? My roles in the way the world sees me, or the way I see myself. Happiness is found in materialistic things and through others' sort of view of you instead of how I view myself. So self-acceptance is very powerful, but it takes a lot of work to achieve that. So I think a lot of women face those insecurities, and no matter how successful and how highly educated you become as a woman, there's always that little bit in you. Yeah, I mean, I certainly feel it, and I'm not ashamed to say it. But I still, there are parts of me that feel that I'm somehow not good enough or damaged or whatnot. And I've been in a few abusive relationships even after my marriage, not physically but definitely emotionally. I've let men get away with a lot of crap and treating me like crap, and I've let people tell me, let them put me down, or I've allowed myself to uh, try to fit into their box because I didn't see myself as being deserving of more. And I thought maybe that's what I need to do in order to get love and acceptance.
Right.
So, one woman once said to me, and I asked her this question, you're so successful, and so what is it? She's like, you know why? Because the devil known is better than the devil unknown. Who knows what I'm going to find out there afterwards? I don't want to be alone for the rest of my life.
Certainly. I mean, do you feel, because of what you're saying, it's important to empower survivors to become more vigilant? Because I wonder whether, because we all do, I think, have this tendency, we want to believe in the good of people, or we want to be in the world thinking that most people are good. And I think that's what the abusers are exploiting, is that preconception. So do you think part of it maybe is to be trusting but not too trusting
Yes,
right away?
absolutely.
To be vulnerable but not too quickly. To sort of like open up, but to let that be more of a slower patient process.
A lot of people are in love with the idea of love.
Right. Yes.
My mentor gave me this amazing advice, and he said, do not fall in love with the potential of a person. Fall in love with the person themselves. So we see the good in somebody, and this is both ways. This goes applies to men and women. We see the good in somebody, and we're like, oh my gosh, there's so much good in there, right? I can live with the bad. Right? And everybody has flaws, but abuse is not a flaw. Abuse is not just, all of us are imperfect. That's what makes us who we are. We're human, and we're beautiful in our own ways, and special and deserving of all the love and belonging. But there's a difference between being flawed and being abusive.
Right.
Right. I have a lot of flaws, but I have no desire to control somebody.
Right.
So that comes from a place of deep insecurity, because I think at the end of the day, abusers see themselves as somehow damaged, and they think that by bringing somebody down to that level or beneath that will make them feel good. So, there's a lot there at play. But yes, for sure, there needs to be more vigilance. There needs to be more education and awareness.
Right.
The taboo needs to be taken out of these conversations.
Right.
Abuse is like, oh my God, like people think it's something that you can't possibly speak about. I talk about it with my children at the dinner table because I want them to be vigilant. I want them to have the tools and awareness to be able to identify it, put a word to it. That's so powerful. Like what I said earlier, like after 10 years of marriage, I was finally able to know what to call this thing, label it, and it made me feel, oh my God, it was not me. It's just something else entirely. So by identifying it, recognizing it, and nipping it in the bud is how we're going to be teaching others around us, especially our children and youth, to be able to protect themselves and others. Secondly, having more awareness campaigns, more conversations about it. Like that's why Me Too is so important. And I always say, like, if Me Too does nothing else but to just show people that it's okay to speak up and give them their voices back, that's a huge step in the right direction. And so instead of shaming victims, support them.
Right.
you don't feel sorry for them. Empower them,
Mm-hmm.
right? If somebody's coming to you and telling your story and you shame that person, you're putting them into the exact same box
Sure.
that they're trying to get out of. And I think there needs to be more peer support.
Mm-hmm.
I think, a lot of times people are like, yeah, they rely on agencies and institutions and shelters and support workers and trained, professionals to be able to deal with, like, yeah, you should go for counseling. You should.
Right.
I'm not putting those things down.
Right.
I'm in counseling. I've been in counseling for many, many years, and I'll literally talk about the benefits of that until the end of time. But there has to be more human support and community support.
Right.
The biggest game changer for me in my life and in my journey was the fact that I was in university and I found support there. I found people who championed me, who empowered me, my friends who watched my children when I was in court or class, my professors who recommended and supported me for scholarships, and my mentors who helped me make every decision in my life. And those are the people who had faith in me, and that taught me to have faith in myself. And that's what support and human connection and mentorship, or whatever you want to call it, that's what it does. Because it is like, as from a survivor's point of view, your confidence is low and you don't know what the world and the future holds for you. And here is somebody who actually believes in you and they don't want anything from you.
Right.
And they're just giving some of their time voluntarily, not because they're paid to do it, to just sit with you and help you succeed. And like, okay, so I'm not a bad person. If they see something good in me, it means there must be something good in me, and that the psychological benefit of that is priceless.
Right.
You feel like you're not alone. You feel like, yeah, I can do this. There are good people out in the world. Maybe it's not as bad as I thought it would be, and I'm not alone. And that is just so priceless. I cannot even I can't even put it into words, because it makes it easier to do those 5 jobs and to go to school and to raise your children and all of that, because you feel empowered. You feel like, yeah, I've got people in my life. I've got my cheerleading squad.
Yes.
And that, I think, it comes from everybody. It takes a village to raise a person, and the village can be another, just even one person, but that makes the world of a difference.
No, I think that's a wonderful point about peer support. And I want to ask you about that because I know you've been meeting a lot of survivors. What has it been like for you to meet someone who's had the same lived experience?
For me personally,
Yes.
I kind of, obviously I always knew that my story was not just mine, and especially after I started going for counseling and educating myself about it when I was in school. But I didn't know how big the problem was. My inbox is flooded every single day
Right.
with women from around the world writing to me, and a lot of men, to be honest, as well, because when I talk about abuse, I make sure that I'm inclusive and I'm not isolating men, because it happens to men as well. So I think hearing stories and people coming and talking to me or writing to me, in a way, it's been more empowering. It's been very healing, because you feel you're not alone. I feel that it certainly was not me or my fault, because I'm not the only person it happened to. But it also makes me very sad that it happens to so many people. It makes me angry. It makes me just, it gives me this sort of fueling, burning passion and desire to do whatever I can to reduce it or eliminate it, do my part, right? And I try to always find different ways of, whether it's through speaking up or mentoring or empowering others and whatnot, just to do something about it, because it's so unfair. And a lot of times when I meet with women who are in it and who are in that stage where I was for a long time, that I don't know if I can make it. I don't know if I should leave. I don't know if I'll be able to survive or if I'll find anyone else. And I just want to sometimes scream and say, yes, you will.
Right.
But, there's that line where I know that they're not ready to hear it. And if somebody had said that to me in the first 5 years or actually even 7 years of my marriage, I would have been like, no, I would shut that person down and not talk to them
Right.
because I was not ready to hear it.
Right.
And it makes me very sad. It makes me very angry. It makes me very disgusted. But I've learned to use that towards positive change and use it as a fuel to keep doing the work that I'm doing, instead of being re-traumatized or shamed or whatnot. Yeah.
Right. I mean, now beyond the outside of your abusive marriage and the whole sort of social context in which that was occurring, how do you actually see those who were responsible for it in terms of, I guess, there's no doubt, there's no doubt, it's inexcusable. How culpable do you think they are now from where you're seeing it because of all these sorts of deeply ingrained toxic ideas that they believed in, and fortunately you were able to break free from? Like, how has that been for you looking at that now? And this whole thing about forgiveness that we've been talking about, has it made it easier or more difficult to forgive, if that's going to happen at all?
There's a lot of pressure on people to forgive in order to be able to move on and let go. I think it's to be able to hold somebody accountable is very empowering.
Right.
Because you put the shame and the blame where it belongs, with the perpetrators and with the abusers. So while I cannot say for certainty that I forgive the people who treated me badly, I can, however, say that I'm definitely at least striving every single day to not let it impact my happiness today.
Right.
And I think happiness comes from a place of self-love and self-acceptance, first and foremost. And I I strive to love and accept myself entirely for who I am, which then has made me look at all of that from a distance, because not only have I separated myself from my marriage, of course, but I have, to a certain degree, separated myself from the culture and the community. And I have my own people. I have people from all walks of life who are my friends, all backgrounds, but we share the same values. We share the values of treating people with kindness and respect, and ourselves with kindness and respect. And it's from a place of no judgment, from a place of empowering each other. And I'm very blessed to have a lot of great people in my life, a lot of wonderful friends and mentors and people I work with and everything. So when I'm able to look at all of that, it's kind of like a toxic puddling bubble sort of thing, which is just sort of covered with this beautiful veil called honor.
Right.
And you take that veil off and then you see all this, venom, which is impacting so many people's lives, especially women, in a very, very toxic and negative way. So I'm able to recognize it for what it is, the hypocrisy, the bigotry, the double standards, the judgment. And there was a time, even up until 3 or 4 years ago, when it would just bring me down and it would make me, somehow feel that, oh my God, I'll never be accepted by by the culture. I'll never be one of their own. I'll always be a misfit, and it would dishearten me. And now I'm able to see it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I'm out of it.
Right.
But then I also feel very angry and sorry for the people who are still in it.
Yes.
You know, and a few months ago, a very good friend of mine said that she has been receiving calls from very prominent people in the Pakistani community here, telling her that she shouldn't be friends with me because I'm a homewrecker who causes people's divorces. So, you know, if I'd heard that comment, let's say 5 years ago, I would have cried about it, and I would have felt, no, but that's not what I'm doing. I'm helping so many Pakistani women, and you know, why do people see me this way? But now I'm able to laugh about it, you know, and say, okay, well, if I'm ruffling those feathers, it means I must be doing something good.
Absolutely. That's why I felt I had to ask that question, because there's a certain element of tragedy that people are operating according to these beliefs that they actually think is right. And they're so blind to the harm that they're actually doing.
Yeah. And you know what? It comes from a place of, it's not about me. It's not about me as a person. It's about what I represent.
Right.
Because I'm threatening their reality.
Yes.
They have built their entire lives on this constructed set of values, however flawed and however damaging they may be. That's their reality. And if you threaten people's realities, they lash out.
Yes.
So a lot of women, I get more hate from women than I do from men. And a lot of women who have spent their entire lives, and their families and their mothers and everybody have spent their lives believing that a good woman is the one who stays quiet.
Right.
So a woman like me must be bad.
Okay.
Right? They've believed for all their life that it's impossible for a woman to make it on her own if she's honorable and pious and you know, a good person, a good woman. So the fact that I've been successful means that I must have been sleeping around, and I must have been promiscuous, and there must be something wrong with me.
Right.
You know, so because it's very difficult to accept that, oh my gosh, maybe I'm the one wrong here. Maybe my values are wrong. Maybe I need to change. People don't like changing.
No.
So
especially
it's
when it's
just
intergenerational, right? It's just passed down. And I think that's why, I mean, your story is almost like a heroic narrative, because here you are, I mean, maybe the first in your own family to break free from this, and now start a new narrative where, you know, you're empowering.
I want to tell you a little quick story on that. My younger daughter, actually, we were driving a few days ago, just last week actually, she's just like, she has these random thoughts all the time. So she goes, Mom, I was just thinking, so you are like the historic woman in our family.
Yes.
You know, like my great-great-great-grandchildren will say, oh, there was this woman. She's the one who broke the cycle.
That's right. Yes.
You know, because if you didn't do this, then, you know, me and my older sister would also be married, and we would face it, and then it would just keep going and going and going. So you're the one who put a stop to it. And it's true, because it takes a lot of courage and strength, of course, to break that cycle. But the impact is not just on your life; it's on future generations. I'm not saying my kids' lives are going to be perfect, but they know that they're not going to allow a man to mistreat them.
Right. I think it's interesting that you've gone this compassionate route, because, you know, there are survivors who go the other way, right?
Yes.
Who've endured so much abuse that they
become bitter.
It's just difficult to become compassionate, or to be compassionate after an experience like that. So I'm wondering if you can give us any insight into, like, how you've been able not only to be compassionate, but also sensitive, like especially sensitive to the plight of others.
I think it's a personality thing, and also a matter of choice.
Right.
I read something somewhere which has stuck with me, and I read this a few years ago, that you can allow your experiences to make you bitter or better. The choice is yours.
Right.
So I certainly have met many people who become very bitter after traumatic experiences, it's not just about abuse. Any kind of trauma can make you
Right.
bitter and cynical and jaded and think the whole world should now be sympathetic towards you, and some people actually get a kick out of pity
Okay.
as well. So certainly that happens.
Yes.
I think for me personally, I've always just been very passionate about change. So even as a young girl, I started a girls' cricket team in my school because girls weren't allowed to play cricket. So I thought, okay, well, we're not allowed to play in the boys' team, we'll make our own.
Right.
I started a school newspaper and I was, in the debate club talking about girls' education and in my little small town in Abu Dhabi where there was really nothing. It was, but I still found ways to do that, and I've always been passionate about helping others. So in my little ways, I would do things to give back. I would get pocket money or an allowance, and I would usually go out and buy a poor man on the street some food.
Right.
So even when I was a little girl, so it I've always gotten a lot of happiness by helping others.
Right.
And it's not just about happiness, it's also empowerment, because there's a sense of peace and a sense of value,
Right.
that you get out of making a difference in someone's life. You feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going through so much adversity, I'm going through such a shitty time, but I can still put a smile on someone else's face. And that makes you feel worthy. It makes you feel of value. That I have a value, I have a place in this world. I can actually make a difference. And it's very empowering.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point. I've been wondering a lot about compassion, especially as you speak about it, because I think maybe the West has it wrong. We kind of, we remain largely, I feel like, an individualistic society to the point where, we promote doing things on your own, doing things for yourself, getting value from every interaction. But I wonder whether happiness is really walking alongside
It is.
people, but also actually suffering with them because of what you can give them in that process.
I wouldn't really label it as suffering. I would just say experiencing with them.
Okay.
Because every experience is valuable, whether it's good or bad. I think it teaches you something, and it teaches you very valuable lessons. So I love the mistakes that I've made. I love the experiences that I've been in. I mean, they were not okay, and because of the fact what others did to me.
Right.
But when I look at what it has allowed me to shape myself as and become the person I am, I think it's to me it's precious. However, I wouldn't really say that the West is all wrong. I think that exists across the world.
Yes.
We are pressured through social media, through others around us, to strive for individual success.
Yes.
And again, it's all about that, being put into a box. Bigger house, more money, better car. You're in debt because you want to live lavishly and beyond your means.
Right.
And then you're stressed out, and then you're upset about how your body looks in relation to the Victoria's Secret models, it's and then you eat more, and then you just feel depressed, and all kinds of things where we are constantly told that we need to fit into this mold of perfection.
Right.
And none of us can achieve that.
No.
Ever.
That's right.
Because we're not meant to be perfect.
That's exactly
We're not meant to be without flaws. I don't even like calling them flaws. I like just calling them, you know, my special traits.
Yeah.
Because if we were all the same, then why would we, feel the need to have so many of us?
Right.
It's our power lies in our uniqueness, and if somebody cannot love and accept us for who we are as a unique person, then they don't deserve to be in our lives. There are lots of other people who will love and accept you
That's
for who you
right.
are.
That's right.
So there's definitely this constant race going on
Yeah.
in society, and I feel very blessed to have learned this at an early stage in my life, or relatively earlier stage, that I'm not, yes, I have a great career, and I, in the eyes of the world, I'm successful, and I have lots of people who know me and all of that. But all those are like byproducts. The purpose that you live for, the legacy you leave behind, the lives you touch, and the lives that touch yours,
Right.
and the connections you cultivate, and the connections you form, the love and belonging you share with others around you, that is
Yes.
what is so meaningful.
Certainly.
And you can have that relationship with yourself and others no matter what you're going through in life. It gives you a sense of peace.
Yes.
My life is not perfect. I'm going through a lot of challenges. I'm going through, a lot of personal issues right now. But I have this sense of peace and grounding because I know that I'm not alone.
Right.
I have wonderful people in my life. I'll make it. I'll learn something from this. I accept myself, and I don't judge me, and I don't judge others. And that is so empowering. It's so like, it gives you a sense of inner peace. That's almost like you feel invincible.
Yes, no, I think that's beautifully put because, I mean, one of my worries right now, especially in the age of social media, I think I've talked to you about this, is that people are constantly not feeling good enough about all kinds of things, but especially anything related to the visual because it's so image-driven, social media.
Yeah, you
But to
see
have
like
these-
people's selfies, and you
Yeah.
think that their lives are so perfect.
Yeah.
Why am I falling apart?
It's very
No one's
strange
life is
because
perfect.
I feel like even the people taking those photos, they want to have that kind of self-acceptance too, that they would gain a lot, like you're saying, if they could just open up, as we all can, to somebody else about the difficulties they're
So
facing.
to your point, what you mentioned
Yeah.
earlier, which was really, really powerful, was that not everyone deserves to be knowledgeable about your story. Not everyone deserves to hear your story. You don't have to be vulnerable with everybody.
Right.
There's a balance.
Yeah.
I am all for the power of vulnerability. I follow Brené Brown like,
Yes.
like no tomorrow. Like, she's my hero.
Right.
But what she also says, which is really, really empowering, is the fact that vulnerability, compassion, and empathy, and all of that are self-destructive if they do not come with boundaries. So you have to have the right boundaries in place. Not everybody in this world is worthy of your vulnerability.
Right.
And we certainly feel that there's this sort of pressure on us to either be perfect, or if we're vulnerable, we want to share it with everybody and put it out there because that's what we're craving for, is that love and acceptance from other people. But I think you need to pick carefully who's in your life. You need to get to know people before you give them that gift. It's a
Right.
gift,
It is.
right?
Yes.
And not everybody's deserving of that.
Certainly. I mean, this speaks also to, being vigilant or careful because these sorts of rude awakenings that we all have, I think, time to time, that there are some people who will take advantage of your good nature. And in doing so, they'll kind of leverage your vulnerability or your story against you somehow. So Samra, I want to talk to you. I know it hasn't been released yet, but I'm wondering what you could tell us maybe about your book and also why you decided to write it?
Well, I decided to write it because I wanted to reach as many people as I can through all kinds
Right.
of different mediums. I wrote an article last year with the Toronto Life, and it touched a lot of people. And I was like, oh my gosh, a lot of people need to hear this, right? So
Right.
when the opportunity for the book came along, I was like, yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, the everything else is a byproduct. The main goal is to touch as many people's lives as I can and empower as many people as I can. So that's why I decided to write it. It's very, it's a very candid and deep journey
Right.
into my experiences, but also those of others that have been part of my life, and stories that I've heard, and insights and lessons that I've gained along the way.
Right.
And I've tried to be as open as I possibly can, bare my soul.
Right.
So it's been a very enlightening experience, I would say.
Right.
Parts of it have been very difficult. I've had many moments where I've sat on my writer's couch, because I've been working with a ghostwriter, and I've sat on a couch and like just been crying for 2 hours and bawling my eyes out because, oh my God, that happened to me too. Because
Right,
when you're
that's-
talking about it, the
This
memories
was going
hit,
to mention. Yeah.
and my definition of abuse has expanded a lot over time. So things that I at that time didn't really think it was abusive, now when I look back, I'm like, oh my God, that was so abusive.
Right.
That happened too. And then and then just feeling sorry for me and feeling like, oh no, why, and am I ever gonna be able to move past this? So I've definitely had a lot of those moments, but at the same time, I am able to see, okay, oh, you know what, that means others are going to be able to relate to it, because I'm sure I'm not the only one feeling this way,
Right.
or who has felt this way. So it's been a powerful experience, to put it mildly.
So it sounds like there was a lot of like self-learning too, things
Big time.
that you didn't know before going to
Big
the
time. Oh,
over
it's
there.
been
Yes.
I've grown a lot over the course of last year while writing this book.
So finally, Sam, just to sort of wrap things up, I mean, this has been a fantastic discussion. I learned a lot. How do you feel that everything, the book, you empowering survivors, even the article, the Toronto Star article, can now be incorporated into your larger mission going forward, to be, I guess that would be the question, what would you like your mission to be long term?
I think my purpose and mission is the same. It's to keep speaking up and give people their voices back. There are millions of voices that are still trapped, millions of silences that are still waiting to be broken. And if by me sharing my story and experiences and insights and lessons, if speaking up, if by doing that I can show people that it's okay to speak up, it's okay to say no,
Right.
and I can give them their power back, then that's what my mission is. That's a life well lived. That's my definition of success.
Yes.
So that's really what it's all about, and doing it through as many mediums and avenues as possible, whether it's writing a book, whether it's doing it through videos, doing it through interviews, doing it through media, social media, one-on-one conversations. At any given time, I mentor over a dozen women, and I will keep doing it. And a lot of people ask me, "You're so busy, where's your me time?" And I say, that's my me time. This is my me time.
Right.
And I get tremendous happiness out of it, because when I see others being successful, I see women, who write to me and send me pictures of their transcripts and their job letters, and telling me that, oh my God, I got an A on my exam, or I got my first job today.
Yes.
And I see them sending me pictures of their kids and telling me stories of how their kids are doing so much better now that they're out of abuse, or I see men writing to me and telling me that I've inspired them somehow to become better fathers, better husbands, better brothers.
Right.
Last year, when I published that article with Toronto Life, a father from Karachi, Pakistan, where I was born, he wrote to me and said, I have a 17-year-old daughter and her marriage is fixed for next month, and I've decided to cancel the wedding and send her to university after I read your story.
Incredible.
And that is my definition of success.
Yes.
Everything else pales in comparison, I think. And to be able to do it through as many ways and channels as I possibly can, and to make a difference, in tangible ways.
Right.
Of course, by sharing my story and experiences, that's huge, because the first step is always breaking the silence, but then going beyond that and being able to influence decision-making policies.
Right.
Being able to influence how these things are viewed across the world, putting in support systems in place. And that's what I'm trying to do with Brave Beginnings, is, implement the power of mentorship for survivors and that human connection piece that we were talking about, so they're not alone. And that's my mission. So there are different avenues and vehicles to keep doing that, but the goal is the same.
Absolutely. And with just respect to the mentorship, I think that could be extremely powerful, because these would be survivors themselves who are empowering other survivors. There's something almost like ineffable about that, like beyond words, that has that power to change in ways that, a classroom or reading a book just can't. There's something, I guess, perhaps when you're...
It makes it real, it makes it relatable, it makes it human. The essence of
that experience is captured by the person who's lived it. And there's also that trust.
Yeah.
But, well, thank you again, Samra, for the wonderful discussion.
Thank you.
And all the very best.
This was really wonderful.
Yeah,
Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All the great work you do.
Okay, thank you so much.
And thank you for having me.
Oh, no, my pleasure, my pleasure.